This is my 1998 Yamaha Grizzly 600. It's hard to tell from this video, but when I first got it, it was really sluggish off the line. Once the engine revved out, it had plenty of power, but getting moving from a stop was painfully slow. It was behaving as if the CVT was stuck in too high of a ratio. The first thing I had to do to diagnose the issue was to take the CVT cover off. Some of these were kind of tricky to get to, but the best way that I found was about a 6-inch extension with the U-joint on the end of it, and then my 8mm socket on the end of that. To get at the air ducts that were still holding the CVT cover on, I first had to pull off part of this front fender. This clamp in here is what I'm trying to get access to unscrew. With the inner portion of this fender peeled back, now I had room to get to the screw clamp. After that, I had to remove the screw clamps from this duct at the top. Once all the clamps were off, I was able to take the ducts themselves off. With all the fasteners and ducting removed, it just takes a straight pull on the CVT cover to take it off. I had to push down on the foot brake to make room to pull the cover out of the footwell. Here's a better look at where all the screw holes are on the CVT cover. There are 12 of them total. At first I thought that someone had put on a belt that was too small. You can see here that it sits too far into the sheaves at rest. Here's the new belt that I put on. As I started to remove the primary pulley, you can immediately see some of the tension on the belt being released. It's a little bit hard to see on camera, but the inner part of the primary pulley is actually sitting a bit crooked. You can also see in the background of this video that the belt is now able to fully extend to the outward edge of the secondary sheaves. This is what I found when I took apart the primary pulley. The weights were not sitting in the grooves where they were supposed to be. Many of the weights were also damaged from their incorrect installation. The next day I started by doing a thorough cleaning of all the components. First I cleaned off the primary pulley sheave cap. Next was the primary pulley cam. Here it is all nice and tidied up. Before I could clean the main assembly, I had to remove all the weights. These grooves for the weights were caked with nasty old grease. It was hard to get this completely clean, but at least now the rolling surfaces are degreased. After that I filed off a few burrs and other irregularities that I found. I was going to just replace these weights until I saw the price. Over $100 for what's basically just some steel collars with a bit of plastic over them. I decided to just file down the burrs in the damaged sections and see how long that fix would last. The ones I filmed were the most damage, but most of them actually had little to no damage at all. After everything was cleaned and any damaged areas filed out, I put fresh grease on all the weights and reinstalled them. After everything was freshly greased, it was time to put the primary pulley sliders and cam back on. With the cover back on, it was now easy to see that the whole sliding assembly was able to move freely, unlike before. Unfortunately, one of the screws for the cover was already missing when I took it off. Now that I'm editing this video, I realize that I still need to get a new one. I put the belt on the primary collar and the secondary pulley, then spun it over until it seated properly. Once that was done, it was time to put the primary pulley back on. To torque the nuts for the pulleys, Yamaha sells a special tool to keep the pulleys from rotating. I don't have that tool, nor did I want to spend another $200 on a tool I'll only use once or twice, so I had to get creative. I was able to wedge a few socket extensions between the frame and one of the cooling fins on the primary pulley. It did work for me, but know that if you attempt this yourself, you may end up breaking the cooling fin. Ideally, to keep the secondary pulley from rotating, I would use the parking brake to keep the rear wheels from turning. Then I would put the transmission in gear to lock the secondary pulley to the rear wheels. Unfortunately, at the time of this repair, the rear brakes weren't working either. I ended up carefully pressing down on the back of the quad with the bucket of the tractor to hold the whole thing in place. It took several tries to find the right amount of pressure with the bucket to hold the quad in place without overloading it. Eventually though, I was able to get it to hold just enough to get the nut torqued. After that, it was time to reassemble and test. You can hear in these next two clips the before and after. Now it's able to rev out into the engine's power band rather than getting bogged down by the stuck CVT. With that, it was time to go ride this thing the way it was meant to be ridden. This quad has been beaten on for over a year, many times by people who have never ridden before. Although plenty of other things have gone wrong with it, the CVT has never given me any issues after this fix, despite the large amounts of mud and sand it has probably ingested. If If you found this video useful or entertaining, please subscribe to Mittenworks.